Job interview? Don't get stressed. We have the expert tips from Vincent from our career office for you to help you prepare right for your first job interview. So now I'm here with Vincent from the career office. Vincent, please be so kind and introduce yourself. What is the career office and what is your role at the career office?
So first of all, thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here again with you, this time another face from the video team. I'm Vincent. I'm the career office as a manager of the career office. That basically is one of many fancy titles we have, but that basically means that I will assist students both in terms of emails, in events. You will see me both moderate and co-moderate events and trainings. And I'll also be in touch, for example, if we have any on-campus events, I'll be there as well to help students, guide them with their topics and problems. Yeah.
So maybe you will see Vincent out there if you're studying at the Berlin campus, for example.
That might be the case. I'm here quite often.
So today's video is all about the job interview. You are lucky, you have good news, you are invited to a job interview. So what would be the very first step after you got the invitation?
First of all, I would say congratulations on that, right? And you could also spend some time maybe celebrate it for yourself, because the job search is already, I think, one of the hardest challenges you can already have. Interview is the next challenge, and I think once you have gotten an invitation, first step is celebrate it, get it kind of out of the system, then do a neat, formal, friendly confirmation for the invite, right? And then start the preparation for the interview.
So one thing that comes up to my mind is like, can I prepare myself to very common questions that I get definitely asked most likely in every job interview?
Yes, definitely. One of the first things I would recommend is that you kind of gather everything you have and look at it again. So basically, what have you sent them, right? Because that's going to be one of the bases on which they will ask questions. There's usually, I would say, 3 different categories. There's questions about your application, about the company and the position, and also questions, I would say, kind of the wild category, where they kind of just throw you a question that might be related to the job or just something personal to just see your reaction and how you react or how you would handle a situation, right? And you'll find a lot of example questions for that if you just Google it. There's a lot of lists, but again, there's so many different jobs, so the common question for one industry might differ from another one. We, for example, have also training for that because we think just the interviews already, that's a topic we can probably talk 60 to 90 minutes on.
Yeah, definitely. So one thing that's always kind of a problem for a lot of people is, do I talk about salary within the job interview? Do I come to the first job interview with a definitely salary expectation I have for this position?
I would say yes or no. We have this lovely German word called Jein, which both implies yes and no. And I would say yes, you should think about salary, but you shouldn't open up with it, right? If, for example, they open in the first interview, do you have questions? Maybe salary shouldn't be the very first questions you ask, but definitely you should, in your preparations, think about what's the minimum salary so I can maintain my current standard of living. Then also think of what would be your wish salary, and then also look at whatever basically scales of that type of job you're applying for. What is the average and what is the scope you can expect in salary? And then try to bring in yourself to a number that you want to aim for. Bring in your wish salary, for example, as start for your negotiations, right? Maybe you're lucky and you get that, but also have some negotiation room for yourself that you know this is the minimum I can go by, this is the ideal, and this is the dream situation, right? So yes, salary can be a topic in interviews. Most often though, it is mentioned more on the second or third round of interviews, depending on what kind of setup they have.
So I can imagine as a career coach, you have a lot of expertise regarding the job interview. But what are the typical questions you get asked by our students every day?
As you just said, for example, the salary question, how do I approach that, right? This is something where we usually say, let's discuss this on an individual basis. So we kind of get an idea what kind of job the student is applying for. There's going to be a stark difference between a working student job and also full-time employment. And even there might be differences. A working student job, for example, in a tech-related field will pay way more than, for example, more service-oriented field, right? So I would say salary is definitely a question that comes often. And also another one is for the people that change their careers or entering a different industry. How do they sell themselves? A lot of people there struggle with the confidence because they say, I have a lot of work experience, but none of it is relevant. And one of the things we can, for example, on an individual basis, go through is see what skills you have from your previous work experience, for example, that can be translated, can be adapted to your new work environment. And that way you have something to sell in an interview, even if you feel like that experience is not relevant, right? You always bring something good to the table. It's just how you sell it.
Another big thing that comes up to mind is like you want to leave a positive impact in your job interview, but it's still very important to stay authentic. How do I find the balance between those two?
So I think one thing is definitely put that time for preparation in, right? Because the less time you spend going through everything, you're probably the more unprepared you will be if they, for example, throw one of those questions that are categorized as wild out there, right? Your direction. So whenever you feel in an interview you're kind of losing control, try to take it back, right? That means, for example, taking a sip of water, or maybe being honest and let me think about that for a second. This also shows them that you're not just, for example, stumbling into answers, but you maybe, hey, this is a good question, but maybe give me a second and I'll give you a detailed or thought out answer, right? So it's often important if you start to feel nervous, think about how can I control the situation and try to come back to yourself and bring that control to you.
So when I go to the job interview, I should know a little bit about the company I'm going to. What would you recommend are the minimum information I should have when going to a company?
So again, it also depends on what kind of level of experience you want to go in, right? So for example, for an internship or working student position or junior level, you'll probably need less information than compared, for example, a senior or a management level. So I would say you'd start with the job ad. That's your first point of contact and information, and see what's around that ad, right? What teams are related to it, what kind of activities are related to it. Then look at the company website, what kind of general information you find on there. And if you want to go deeper, again, consider it in levels. The more experienced level, the more time you should put in, right? Then also consider looking at their social media, for example, their LinkedIn, or for example, if they have a Twitter account or anything like that, and see what, for example, recent topics have been that are really relevant for them, right? And for example, you can mention those in your application, either in an interview or in your documents as things you found interesting or of note, right? So for example, I noticed you through this success you recently had, and I found that really interesting or inspiring. This not only prepares you for whatever topics right now occupy them, but can also give you good material to ask them questions, for example, if they give the ball to you in an interview and kind of like, oh, what are your questions? And you could, for example, ask about a certain project or how, for example, they tackled a certain challenge with a project you saw online. Basically, the company website is the first point of contact. Social media would be the next. And from there on, you can also see what kind of projects they're working on, what kind of partners they might be interacting.
To sum it up, do you have 3 top tips from you for the job interview?
So the first one is very, very practical. It depends whether online or offline. Always make sure you're prepared in the sense that online, make sure your software and hardware are up to date. It would be really unfortunate if, for example, your computer counts down from 10 during the interview and says, I'm doing a restart right now. That could be, and this is actually a nightmare situation that can happen to people, right? Check your camera and all your software, whether everything works, right? That's for the online interview. Definitely make sure of that. Also, consider your background, right? Take a blurred background if you have a very personal background, or try to go for a white wall or anything like that. It's very simple things, but they can have an influence. If, for example, you have a poster or dirty laundry in the background, that can have an influence on your interview, right? The same also if you go for an offline interview, prepare that you will be on time, right? In the one sense, it's the tech. If you do an online event, if in person, consider there's going to be traffic. There could be public transit issues. Be sure that you are there on time or even early, right? And if, for example, you're delayed, then make sure to inform them, right, in time so they don't get a bad impression from you, right? So that's just the practical level. On the personal level, as said earlier before, try to prepare yourself. So look at the job ad, all the documents you sent them, any things they have sent to you, because that's the basis you will make your preparations on, right? That's also the basis they will ask you questions on, right? You send them basically information about you, and they might ask you questions based on that. So prepare and be confident that whatever you send them, you can stand behind that, and you can present yourself well, and also can present your experience as well.
Thanks a lot for those insights, Vincent, and I hope you got a lot more information out of this video too. And don't forget to check out all the other videos about careers on this YouTube channel.